We were talking before about No Man's Sky, and that's obviously the video game du jour and the one that everyone's talking about these days. And we all have many opinions on it, but I'm curious to hear your immediate thoughts on the most hyped video game of all time.
So I think I'm pretty fortunate in that I stayed away from the hype. So going into it, I had no preconceptions other than I know you can get in a spaceship and I know you can fly off your planet. Like, that was literally all I was going into the game with in my mind. And so I'm actually enjoying it quite a bit. The basic systems of the game aren't very hard to figure out, right? Like, there's not a lot of depth to it yet. But the thing is that even despite recognizing those systems, I'm still enjoying playing the game, because you never know when you're going to come across like a planet where just something weird happens, and it has nothing to do with the systems of the game other than that they were procedurally generated and the stage was set for you to have an experience that normally you wouldn't be able to have in a game because things are so scripted. Like, there was one planet I was on, I think I actually posted this one to Twitter, where it's, just this cool looking planet, and then a storm rolls through and I'm kind of panning around and there's this other planet just hanging overhead. And I mean, it's like, for a science fiction nerd, growing up reading sci-fi fantasy, like playing all these games, it's like, I want that. That is the game that I want. Just, I can see that planet hanging there and I know I can go there. And yeah, it may not have anything great on there, but I can, like, I see this vista and I know that everything is accessible. So,
so you're saying the potential is more exciting?
Oh yeah, the potential.
I think there's a lot to that, right? I'm trying to remember who it was. I think it was Simon Carlis, the Gama Sutra guy, was tweeting something about possibility space in games this year, and how like the possibility space of No Man's Sky is this huge part of its appeal. That just, it feels there's so much possibility. The reality is almost not always important,
right? Yeah,
compared to the possibility.
You're gonna mine, get warp fuel, move to the next planet. Like that's right. Really all you're gonna do. But the thing is that just looking at what they've been able to do with the tech and with how the game is that, like, right now we're just playing No Man's Sky, but when they start patching in new things, or when a 150-man dev team takes that tech and does something with it, like if a Rockstar takes that tech and makes GTA in space, right? Like, I think of that and I'm just like, please make that happen. Please just let it happen.
Grand Theft Starship. I would play that.
Yeah, game. Exactly.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if a team could, no matter how big the team is, I don't know if they could actually design a game that still feels like it's really every procedurally generated planet is also full of interesting things and surprises you in an interesting way.
I think, I feel like... Well, go ahead, finish your thought, and then I'll say what I think.
Well, so I was going to say, I feel like with No Man's Sky, they took these tricks and made it so, like you mentioned in your review, Kirk, that you noticed that everyone ran into the same sort of encounters where, for example, you run into an alien and you marry the other alien that they were, like, you know what I'm talking about, right? Like, they present you with that situation, and it's like you can go marry one of the aliens. And I think the designers took some tricks and kind of made it so you would always run into those similar encounters. Like, there's a pathway of encounters that you will run into no matter where in the universe you are, because that's just the way the game is designed. They want you to run into all these interesting things. And I think no matter how big the team is, they would still have to take those same tricks in order to make it so you're finding interesting things in a procedurally generated universe.
So I kind of think, and not to get too far into like what No Man's Sky could be versus what it is, but the thing that's missing for me is that could make it sort of what we're talking about would be the ability for players to create things. I think that's sort of the huge thing that sets this game but maybe back a little bit, or makes it just feel a little so shallow, because you after a while, like you said, Jason, I think you can stay on your starter planet and you'll see everything. Like it just generates stuff for you, and you don't even have to leave, and you'll kind of see everything there is. But think about this, and there's another game I'll talk about in a second, but think about if it was like Minecraft, like if you could build unbelievable contraptions on your planet and then leave them behind. And think about if exploring meant that you could just find some crazy shit that somebody made. Like, that would actually not be that hard to do, I don't think. And that's the kind of thing that makes the game seem really amazing. Like, there was that Jason Rohrer experiment. Chris, I don't know if you've heard of this, but maybe you did. He did this experimental gameplay game at the Game Developers Conference like 3-4 years ago, a game designer named Jason Rohrer. He's like he's a really smart guy. He made this game called Chain World, where it's a Minecraft world that's on a USB key, and you play one life on it and build anything you want. And then when you die, it just like copies your world to the USB disk, and you're done, and you have to give it to somebody else. And his idea was cool. That like each time you load it up, you find this world, and there's like things that have been created by people, but you don't know why or who they were, and you're not ever allowed to talk about what you made in the world. I think that concept could totally work in a game like No Man's Sky, where you land somewhere and it's basically like aliens have left a civilization behind and you don't know who. Right. That's something that would be really, really cool, I think.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing too, like looking at No Man's Sky, if you go through and look at like what the sorry, they're doing painting on my house. if any of that is bleeding through. But one of the things in No Man's Sky that like I've been looking at, like the trading stations and the ships and stuff like that, is a lot of the materials they sell, right? There's no recipe for them. Like there's all these materials that reference like base building and starship building, and I think that as developers, they probably want to have stuff like that, but they just may not have had the time, because you could spend 10 years making a game if you wanted to. Like the problem is that at some point you have to ship it, right? Like you actually have to get it out the door. So I think for me at least, No Man's Sky is one of those, it's a lot like Destiny, right? Where year one Destiny was a beta test, and as Kotaku has, which I love, by the way, the fact that you constantly refer to it as ongoing beta test Destiny. But for me, No Man's Sky feels very much the same in that, like, I'm willing to give it a year and a half, 2 years to see, okay, what are you going to build on top of it? Because I feel like the core of it, like Destiny's core, right, is the gunplay. Like, there's not a better gunplay game out there than Destiny. For No Man's Sky, the core is that exploration and that sense of this giant universe, and if they're able to add stuff onto that's like the Taken King, right? That's like the Iron Brotherhood stuff coming up, like, then you really just get this huge complete game where, who knows, maybe you can do stuff like that, where you are able to build bases, and then people can come down and actually see what you've done.
Yeah, well, they've said that base building is coming, but Kirk, to your point before about it being easy, I mean, I think that the way the game is built right now, I mean, based on what people have figured out when doing the whole multiplayer thing, right now it seems like everything you see is your local content, so it's on your PS4 and it's not on any...
When I say it's easy, I'm not saying it would be easy to patch it into the game or something. I just mean, like, in theory, that sort of thing already exists in games like Minecraft, and in a future possible game.
No, but the difference is, well, hear me out. Hold on, hear me out. So the difference is, in Minecraft, when you play a game of Minecraft, you're playing on a specific server, right? And there are millions of servers. People can host their own. You can host it on your own computer, whatever. When you play No Man's Sky, you're playing on the game's servers, and every person, it's the way it seems, and I'm no network expert, and I don't know exactly how this is working, but the way it seems is that every person winds up on whatever server, a random server of the game's choosing, but then the content they're seeing is all local because they can pause the game, and that's the important part, which means that the game is built to be played offline. Essentially, you're playing it, and your content is not getting sent back to the server. It's not being stored anywhere other than on your specific PS4. So I think, and I could be totally wrong, but the way that I'm interpreting this is that it would be very, very difficult for them to then pivot to a more of a Minecraft-esque experience where you can see what other people have done in the world.
Yeah, I'm speaking much more abstractly here. I think that it would definitely be possible for someone to make a game like that. I don't know about how No Man's Sky works to like sync the server with,
but I wouldn't
like with other things. No, that's not what I mean at all. I mean, like, I was more talking about what Chris was talking about earlier when he was saying this beginning, it feels like a first step along the way towards something really amazing, and sort of thinking not only could a larger team do something cool with this, but also just someone able to implement that alone could make it something really cool.
Yeah, that's true. But I think, and Chris, to your point, I actually think that I agree with you guys that the tech is really cool and would make a fascinating building block for something else, but I don't think it's going to be No Man's Sky. I actually think what we see now, I don't think it's going to change all that much to the point where it becomes a different game.
I think you're right. I think it's pretty set.
I disagree in that. So I think one of the problems that No Man's Sky has is that it's too big, right? It's designed so that your single player experience, generally you're not going to run across anyone else. But if you were making a game that was planets the size of No Man's Sky's planets, because like these are legit planets, right? Like you can explore one and maybe find 1% of what's on, the surface of it. Like if you were to design a game that was maybe just one solar system using that tech, now you have something where, okay, these planets feel huge. Then you could have the diversity be the different biomes within the planet, because that's another issue with No Man's Sky is, one planet is the same all the way wherever you go, right? There's no snow areas, there's no, dry areas, it's just all one thing. So rather than have that diversity be planet by planet, if it's sections within each planet, now all of a sudden this planet feels like a planet and it feels huge and it feels like you're exploring, and you could have it be just as big, but now people get the sense that they are interconnected with other people, right? Because it's not they're way off on the other side of the galaxy. It's maybe they're in the Antarctic and I'm in South America. Like I could just fly right over there. I could go check that out if I had the resources. So like something like that I would love to see.
The thinness of the game does bum me out, and the difficulty navigating. I just reviewed this game, and in my review I talked about how I spent the first 30 hours on PS4 sort of just skipping from solar system to solar system, and eventually just felt like, what the hell am I doing? I wasn't naming anything. I was just following that Atlas path, which was a huge mistake for me. And then the second time I played it, I stayed put and really just sort of enjoyed the planets I was on and got to know them and went back and forth. And the hardest thing about doing that for me, about staying put, was that the game actually makes it very, very difficult to enjoy where you are, which is something that I think is a real failing of the game. I think it's something that they should have done differently. It's so hard to find even just solar systems that you've been to. You have to do that weird scan for discoveries, which is also just an unclear UI prompt. And then you have to kind of cycle through the nearest ones until you find it. There's no way in your little directory, there's no way to just select set waypoint and go back to anywhere you've been. Yeah. You can't leave waypoints on planets. You can't, it's so hard to feel like you're actually holding on to anything with the things you've discovered, which is too bad because I kind of devised a way to do that. And it really left me feeling attached by the game and really into it. And I wish they had implemented that better.
Right. So future developers that are listening to this, if you want your players to really enjoy your game, make sure that they can create a history within that game and then go back and find that history.
Yeah. How cool would it be if you could get all the way to the center of the galaxy and then look and see an incredible star chart of your whole journey? Right. That would be so good. And it's
like, this was my epic travel to reach the middle. Something like that would be great.
It would be really cool.
Yeah, it's too bad. It's interesting how whenever people talk about No Man's Sky, they talk about more about what they wish No Man's Sky was than what it actually is.
It's that possibility space thing. I think the game really lends itself to that because
well, that's what it is.
It has. I was talking to Steven when he was editing it. We were talking about I think it's Borges or the author who I actually haven't read, but he wrote this book that game designers talk about a lot, and I'm probably going to mangle it, so I'm sorry to any academics who are listening and have read this book because they're smarter than I am and they know what it is. But basically it's about a library where within the library there is a book that contains all of the books within the library. It's like a sort of a recursive idea, and we were joking about No Man's Sky and how there's always this argument with No Man's Sky that the game itself contains whatever you're looking for. Oh, the story is bad. Oh, well, somewhere out there's a good story. The UI is crappy. Oh, well, somewhere, if you just explore Fire, you'll find a better UI. Like, you'll find a patch out there somewhere that'll stop the game from crashing all the time. And just sort of
we haven't explored all of it yet.
You don't know. You don't know. It's possible, which is sort of a funny thing about this
You
game.
have to find the Corvax word for crash.
Right, yeah. And then the game will stop crashing.